Imagine your typical morning routine for a second. Like, really think about the exact moment your eyes open.
Oh, boy.
Right? Is there even, a single second of peace? Or is it just instantly frantic?
For most of us, it is absolutely frantic.
Exactly. The alarm blares, and almost instinctively, muscle memory just takes over, your hand shoots out, you grab that glowing rectangle from the nightstand.
Yeah, before your feet have even touched the floor.
And you are instantly hit with an absolute avalanche. You've got a dozen push notifications, 3 urgent emails from your boss, some terrifying news headline about the global economy.
There's always a terrifying headline,
Always. Plus, a reminder that your car registration is due. So before you've even taken a full breath of morning air, you are already carrying the immediate, crushing pressures of the entire day.
You are already behind.
Yes, you are already behind.
It creates a cognitive state that is just entirely reactionary. We wake up and our very first psychological movement is to assume this defensive posture.
Right, like we're bracing for impact.
Exactly. We are bracing for impact against whatever the world has decided to throw at us over the last 8 hours while we were asleep and vulnerable. We don't really start our days. We survive them.
We survive them.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way to put it. You are either unconscious or you are at war with your inbox.
There's really no middle ground anymore.
None. And it feels inescapable, right? Like this is just the cost of participating in the modern world. But then you stumble across a source like the one we're doing a deep dive into today.
Oh, this source is incredible.
It really is. And it makes that entire modern framework, the idea that you have to wake up swinging, it just completely shatters it.
Yeah, it really takes a hammer to that idea.
So today we were looking at a digital broadcast and the text that goes with it, titled Chesterton Radio Morning Prayer. And this one's dated July 9, 2026.
Which is such a fascinating piece of media. It's hosted on Substack, which is a platform that's been around since 2018, I think.
Yep, 2018.
But it actively rebels against the standard newsletter format.
Oh, totally.
It doesn't hit you with bullet points or daily productivity hacks. Instead, it functions much more like a portal to another era.
A portal is a good way to describe it.
The creators blend classic radio drama aesthetics, the theological and literary reflections of writers like G.K. Chesterton, and this incredibly distinct, quiet, old-time radio atmosphere.
I really want to focus on that atmosphere for a minute because it isn't just window dressing.
No, it's doing heavy lifting.
Exactly. The setting is actively doing the work of slowing your brain down. When you engage with this broadcast, you aren't just reading text on a screen.
Or just listening to some sterile corporate voice.
Right. The source paints this incredibly vivid, almost tactile picture. You are instantly transported to this little brick radio station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas.
It's such a specific vibe.
It is. It's early. The sun hasn't quite crested the bluffs yet. You hear the distinct toll of a church bell ringing across the Missouri River. You hear the birds just beginning their morning chorus in the summer warmth. There's the low, distant rumble of a freight train.
It really forces you to inhabit the quiet hum of a Midwestern town that is only just beginning to wake up.
In the physical setting of Atchison, it acts as almost like an airlock.
Oh, I like that. An airlock.
Yeah, you step out of the vacuum of your digital anxieties and into this grounded sensory environment. And it demands that you match its pacing.
Because you really cannot bring that frantic reactionary energy into a space defined by a single church bell and a distant train. It just doesn't fit.
It doesn't. And the text addresses you right where you are, whether you're already commuting or, pouring your first cup of dark roast coffee.
Or unlocking the door to your workshop.
Exactly. Or just standing on your porch, feeling the cool morning air. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore what happens when you actually let that environment change you.
Because it is a radical change.
It really is. We are going to unpack the central paradox presented in this morning broadcast.
And it's a big one.
The text proposes this idea that truly acknowledging how much we have been freely given by God before we've earned a single thing is the absolute only way we can ever freely give anything of value to others.
It's so countercultural.
Completely. We're going to look at how this broadcast uses ancient scripture to aggressively challenge our society's obsession with transactions and ledgers.
And ultimately, how it offers a shockingly practical framework for just, walking out your front door today.
Yeah, and that transition from the physical setting into the psychological reality, that's where the source makes its first major strike against the modern routine.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, it establishes the town, the morning, the quiet. But then it makes a really profound assertion about why we are gathering in this quiet.
Right. The text states that we are gathering here before the noise of the world has had its full say.
Before the noise of the world has had its full say.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that line and I literally had to put my tablet down for a second.
It's a brilliant way to frame the morning, isn't it? It really is. And it isn't claiming that the world is inherently evil or that it doesn't have valid things to tell you later in the day.
Sure, you still have to pay your bills and check the news eventually.
Exactly. But it makes this hard rule stating someone else always speaks first.
Someone else always speaks first. It's an assertion of hierarchy. Like who gets the absolute first word in your mind?
Yes. And the text is making a philosophical argument here. If you let the noise of the world speak first, if your phone screen is your first input, the world will dictate the terms of your existence for the next 16 hours.
C.S. Lewis actually talked about this a lot, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis depicts hell as this place of just constant infernal noise.
Right. The demons hate silence.
They despise it because silence allows you to actually hear the divine voice. Noise is the ultimate distraction. So by intentionally beginning the day with this broadcast, and specifically with ancient rhythmic prayers, you are making a declarative statement.
You're telling the anxieties of the world that they do not hold primary authority over your mind.
Precisely.
It perfectly exposes what we call the attention economy. I mean, we use the phrase paying attention so casually, but we are literally talking about currency.
We pay with our focus.
Exactly. And our modern instinct is to wake up, groggy, and immediately hand our mental wallets over to Silicon Valley, to advertisers, to the 24-hour news cycle.
We just let them set the agenda.
But this text is an act of deliberate withholding. You are refusing to pay that toll. Instead, the broadcast grounds the listener by opening with a line from the ancient invitatory,
which is, O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall declare thy praise.
Think about the mechanics of that specific prayer for a second. Open thou my lips. You aren't waking up and immediately broadcasting your own opinions on social media.
And you aren't waking up and reacting to someone else's opinions either.
Right. You are asking the Creator for permission to speak. You're asking for the capacity to speak something of actual value.
It is a posture of profound humility, which is so rare these days.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when I look at the whole picture, the broadcast follows that request for permission right into Psalm 94, the invitatory psalm.
This is where we really see that posture of joyful surrender take shape.
The scale of the imagery the text highlights here is just massive. It talks about God holding the deep places of the earth in his hand.
It says, the sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land.
We're talking about cosmic, terrifying power here. The kind of power that, carved the Mariana Trench and pushed up the Himalayas.
But notice the pivot in the text.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
The psalm establishes this terrifying, unfathomable omnipotence, and then immediately drops the scale down to the most intimate pastoral level imaginable.
It goes from the creator of the oceans to, we are the people, his pasture, and the sheep of his hand.
From tectonic plates to a shepherd tending a flock.
That scale shift is jarring, but in a deeply comforting way. You are acknowledging a creator who is big enough to hold the universe, but attentive enough to guide you specifically.
But the text doesn't just leave you in a warm, fuzzy pasture.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It juxtaposes this joyful noise of praise with a really stark, uncomfortable warning. The psalm takes a sharp historical turn.
Right. It says, today if you shall hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation in the wilderness.
Historically, this is referencing the Israelites wandering in the desert after escaping Egypt. They had seen these massive miracles, but the moment they got thirsty, they doubted God's provision.
They panicked.
Yeah, they hardened their hearts. But psychologically, for the listener in 2026, this is a direct warning about the dangers of cynicism.
Cynicism is exactly what it is, and I think that's why it hits so hard today. Hardening your heart isn't just an ancient mistake.
It's a modern lifestyle.
It is literally the default survival mechanism of the 21st century. I mean, we harden our hearts so we aren't devastated by the tragedies we see on the news every 5 minutes.
Right, compassion fatigue.
Exactly. We harden our hearts so we can aggressively negotiate our salaries. We harden our hearts just to deal with road rage on the commute.
We put on this heavy emotional armor just to get through a Tuesday.
And this broadcast at, 6 o'clock in the morning is asking you to take it off.
Which leaves you incredibly exposed.
Terrifyingly exposed.
Dropping your cynicism means you have to actually trust that you are being guided, not just abandoned to the chaos.
When I was reading that, I couldn't help but wonder, If we actually do that, if we drop the armor and quiet the noise to hear this voice, what is the voice actually saying?
And this is where the source material takes a fascinating turn.
It really does. It moves away from the sweeping majesty of Psalm 94 and brings us into this shockingly intimate, almost heartbreaking portrait of God from the book of Hosea.
This transition occurs in the morning invitation segment of the broadcast.
Right.
The text points out that the liturgy offers one of the most tender passages in all of sacred scripture for this specific morning. We're hearing the Lord speak through the prophet Hosea.
To give a brief bit of context for our listeners, Hosea was a prophet whose own tragic marriage to an unfaithful woman was meant to mirror God's relationship with an unfaithful Israel.
It is a book absolutely dripping with heartbreak.
Yeah, it is heavy.
But the critical distinction the broadcast makes here is how God chooses to speak despite that heartbreak.
Okay, yes, this is a huge point.
The text notes that he is speaking not as a king addressing subjects, but as a father remembering his child.
I want to linger on that distinction for a minute because I think we skip over it way too easily.
We really do.
A king and a father both have authority, sure, but the nature of that authority is entirely different.
Completely different.
I mean, a king demands tribute. A king enforces laws from a distance. If you approach a king, you do it with your head bowed, terrified of stepping out of line and facing the executioner.
A king is defined by the distance between his throne and the dirt you are standing on.
Wow, yes. But a father is down in the dirt with you.
And the broadcast highlights this incredibly domestic language from Hosea. It says, I taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms.
It's the imagery of a parent patiently holding the hands of a wobbling toddler.
It is God remembering the infancy of Israel. Think about the vulnerability inherent in that image.
It's wild.
Yeah.
The creator of the cosmos, the one who formed the dry land we just read about in the psalm, is described as picking up a child with a scraped knee.
And then the broadcast zeroes in on what it calls one of the most astonishing sentences in the Old Testament.
Which is?
God says, my heart is turned within me. I am God and not man.
When I first read I am God and not man, my immediate assumption was about distance again.
Like, I am divine and you are not.
Exactly. I thought it meant I am up here in the heavens and you are down there in the mud. A statement of pure superiority.
But within the context of a father teaching a toddler to walk, it has to mean something entirely different, right?
It is the ultimate inversion of our expectations.
The text analyzes this perfectly, stating, the world expects power to look like vengeance. God reviews that true power is mercy.
Think about human nature for a second. When human beings acquire ultimate, unchecked power, they almost inevitably lean toward tyranny.
History is literally just a long catalog of kings, emperors, and dictators using power to settle scores and crush enemies.
Right. To be a powerful man historically is to dominate.
So when God says, I am God and not man, he is saying, I am not like your petty kings. My ultimate expression of omnipotence is not destroying you for your failures. It is my unlimited capacity for mercy.
Okay, I have to jump in here and create some friction, because while that sounds beautiful in a morning prayer, it sounds like a recipe for disaster in the real world.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
We live in a society that equates power entirely with force and leverage.
Yes.
Power is winning the argument. Power is crushing the competition. Power is publicly ruining someone who crossed you on social media.
It's a zero-sum game.
Exactly. If you go into corporate America today and operate purely on mercy, I mean, if you just forgive everyone who undermines you and refuse to leverage your advantages, you are going to get walked on.
You won't survive.
Right. Doesn't this ancient advice border on total naivete in the modern world?
Well, it only seems naive if your definition of survival is identical to the world's definition of winning.
Okay, fair point.
Yes. Offering mercy in a cutthroat environment is dangerous to your ego. It might even cost you a promotion. But the text is challenging the fundamental premise of what real authority actually is.
So how does it define real authority?
A corporate executive who destroys a rival out of paranoia is acting out of weakness and fear. They are a slave to their own insecurities.
Oh, I see.
True sovereignty, as the text presents it, is the freedom to not retaliate.
The freedom to not retaliate. That's powerful.
If God's power is mercy, then exercising mercy is not weakness. It is the highest form of participation in divine power. It requires a strength of character that most tyrants never, ever possess.
So it's not about rolling over. It's about possessing a security so deep that you don't need to destroy your enemies to feel safe.
Exact.
that actually changes the whole dynamic.
It reframes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
So if we follow this logical through line, if we accept that God's power is defined by mercy rather than vengeance, then the next question is how that mercy is supposed to operate in our lives.
Right. How do we deploy it?
And the broadcast answers this by moving straight from the Old Testament prophet into the Gospel of Matthew chapter 10.
Where Christ sends out his apostles to essentially become delivery mechanisms for this exact mercy.
We move into the gospel mandate. And what is striking here is the sheer magnitude of the assignment, combined with the absolute poverty of the resources they are given.
Jesus gives the 12 this, impossible to-do list. He says, cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, drive out demons.
Just a casual Tuesday afternoon agenda. Hey guys, go raise the dead real quick.
No big deal.
The weight of that expectation is staggering. You would think, given the gravity of the mission, they would be heavily outfitted.
You'd think they'd have an army behind them.
Or at least a really good expense account. But the broadcast spends a significant amount of time focusing on the packing list, or really the anti-packing list.
He explicitly strips them of every standard provision for travel and security in the ancient world.
It's wild. He says no gold, no silver, no copper for their belts, no sack for the journey.
They cannot take a second tunic, they cannot take sandals, and they cannot even take a walking stick.
They are sent out completely exposed.
And the source text points out a deep, almost painful irony here. The reflection section says there is a quiet irony in today's gospel. The apostles are told to travel lightly. Most of us travel heavily.
And it becomes immediately clear it isn't talking about checking bags at the airport.
No, not at all.
The text lists the emotional and psychological luggage that we insist on dragging out the door with us every single morning.
The examples the broadcast provides are remarkably piercing.
They really are.
It says we carry yesterday's failures, tomorrow's fears, unfinished conversations, imagined arguments, and burdens that Christ never asked us to shoulder.
The phrase imagined arguments literally physically hurt me to read.
I felt very attacked by that line.
I have to confess, I spent 20 minutes in the shower this morning absolutely destroying someone in a hypothetical debate.
Oh, we've all been there.
It was an argument about an email that hadn't even been sent yet.
You were winning an argument that didn't exist.
I was standing in the hot water, getting my heart rate up, manufacturing adrenaline, fighting a ghost. The other person wasn't even awake yet, and I was already exhausting myself before breakfast.
It's like we're packing for a quick weekend trip, but we insist on filling a massive 90-pound suitcase with heavy winter coats for a summer vacation in Florida.
Yes. We drag around all these elaborate defenses for scenarios that haven't happened and probably never will.
And why do we do that? We pack defenses against hypothetical winters because we don't actually trust the forecast.
And more importantly, we don't trust the one who sent us on the journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your shower argument is the perfect example of carrying a psychological walking stick or a hidden copper coin. It is a defense mechanism.
But the broadcast makes a beautiful, totally counterintuitive assertion here. It says, faith is lighter than anxiety. Hope weighs less than fear.
Faith is lighter than anxiety. We usually think of faith as a burden, like a heavy set of rules we have to carry around.
A list of obligations.
Right, but the text is arguing the exact opposite.
Precisely. Anxiety requires you to carry the weight of infinite alternate futures. You have to plan for every possible disaster.
That's just exhausting.
It is. The instruction to the apostles to take absolutely nothing isn't just a logistical travel tip for first-century Judea. It is a fundamental lesson in dependency.
If you bring your own money and your own walking stick, you are trusting your own provisions.
You are relying on your own ability to fight off wild dogs and buy bread.
But if you are forced to bring nothing, you are forced to trust the provider. You have to trust that if you need a walking stick, one will be provided when the wolf actually appears, not a moment before.
I think this is where someone like St. Francis of Assisi comes to mind.
Oh, definitely. Chesterton wrote an entire book on St. Francis.
He did. And Francis literally stripped off his expensive clothes in the town square and gave them back to his wealthy father.
He took this gospel mandate from Matthew 10 as literally as a human being possibly could.
He wanted to own absolutely nothing so that he could rely entirely on the grace of God. And Chesterton points out that Francis was the most joyful man in Europe because of it.
Because he was traveling light, he didn't have any ledgers to balance.
But relying entirely on the provider directly collides with the way we survive today.
Because we survive through transactions.
Exactly. Which brings us to the absolute core paradox of this entire broadcast.
The crux of the whole thing.
Why is it so incredibly hard for us to drop the winter coats and travel light? Because we operate in an economic and social reality built entirely on ledgers.
It is the antithesis of what this morning prayer is trying to communicate.
And this is perfectly captured in the anchor quote of the deep dive. The text highlights this one sentence from Matthew and suggests it deserves to stay with us long after our morning coffee has gone cold.
Without cost you have received, without cost you are to give.
Without cost you have received. The source makes it abundantly clear that Christ is not giving a seminar on ancient Palestinian economics here.
No. He is speaking about the fundamental nature of grace in existence.
The text systematically dismantles what we might call the illusion of the earned life.
We walk around feeling profoundly entitled most of the time.
We really do. We believe we have purchased our existence through our hard work, our degrees, our shrewd investments.
But we haven't.
We haven't. And the broadcast hits you with these beautiful, undeniable realities to prove it.
The text points out, we did not purchase the sunrise this morning. We did not earn our first breath.
It brings us right back to the imagery of Hosea the father and the child.
The broadcast contains this wonderful line, no parent sends a bill to a newborn for teaching him to walk.
It completely exposes the absurdity of our entitlement.
It does. I mean, think about it. If you try to trace anything good in your life back to its absolute origin, you eventually hit a wall where you have to admit you didn't create it.
You just received it.
The text argues that love, faith, mercy, and even the capacity to forgive, they all begin as unearned gifts.
God places them within us first. They are given to us before they ever become something we can manufacture or offer to anyone else.
Contrast that reality with the transactional economy that modern life constantly reinforces.
It's night and day.
The text highlights the default questions of the modern mind. What do I get out of this? What does it cost me? What's in it for me?
Everything is measured on a scale.
Every relationship runs the risk of becoming a cost-benefit analysis.
But the gospel, as the broadcast insists, speaks a completely foreign language. It speaks of gifts that cannot be priced because they were never meant to be bought in the first place.
And this is where the perspective of G.K. Chesterton is brought in, which feels incredibly appropriate given the title of the broadcast.
Oh, absolutely. The text notes that Chesterton constantly delighted in pointing out a specific truth about reality.
It says, gratitude is the beginning of wisdom because it reminds us that reality itself is a gift.
Reality itself is a gift. If you truly internalize that idea, then your very existence isn't a right you earned, it's a present.
It changes how you treat everything you touch.
To illustrate how powerful that mindset shift is, the broadcast dives into the historical context of the early church.
And it makes a staggering claim about how this exact philosophy defeated the greatest empire on earth.
Right. It notes that Jesus sent these apostles out with astonishingly little. No wealth, no weapons, no political strategy.
But he gave them something infinitely greater, his authority, his peace, his presence.
And the text points out that the early Christians conquered the Roman Empire without ever raising an army.
How is that even mechanically possible? Rome was a war machine.
It was built entirely on military might, extreme wealth, and rigid transactional power.
It was built on the patronage system specifically.
Okay, explain that for a second. What did that look like for the average Roman?
In Rome, your worth was determined by who you owed and who owed you. It was a strict hierarchy of clients and patrons.
So, ledgers upon ledgers.
Exactly. Slaves and the destitute had zero upward mobility. They had absolutely no value in the ledger.
But the text explains that the Christians conquered this system because they carried a currency. Rome could not manufacture.
Hope.
Yes.
Right.
Rome could manufacture aqueducts and broadswords and silver coins, but it could not manufacture hope for the marginalized.
Christianity entered this brutal transactional society and presented a radical alternative.
It basically said, the creator of the cosmos loves you, intrinsically and infinitely, without requiring a financial or social transaction.
It offered divine worth to the worthless.
They didn't have money, but they possessed a hope that transcended the Roman ledger.
And that proved to be a far more magnetic and disruptive force than military rebellion.
The text insists this dynamic hasn't changed today either. The Christian's greatest possession isn't their bank account or their resume. It is whom they follow.
Okay, I want to take this massive, world-altering history and force it into a smaller box, if we can.
Let's do it.
We understand the theology of freely given grace. We see how it disrupted the Roman patronage system.
Right.
But how does this broadcast from a little radio station in July 2026 expect you, the listener, to actually apply this on a random Tuesday?
Because most of us are not out there toppling empires before our lunch break.
No, we're just trying to get through a staff meeting without losing our minds.
This is perhaps the most vital part of the broadcast. It moves from high theology into a concept it calls sanctity in the ordinary.
I love that phrase.
It deeply acknowledges the unglamorous reality of the listener's day. It states plainly, most of us will not preach from a pulpit today.
You aren't going to heal a leper in the town square.
Exactly. Instead, you're going to walk into a quiet house, a sterile office cubicle, a dusty workshop, a hospital room, or like the fluorescent aisle of a grocery store.
The text calls this being an ordinary missionary.
The imagery it uses to describe this is so incredibly grounded. Dorothy L. Sayers wrote a lot about the dignity of ordinary work, and you can feel echoes of that here.
Oh, for sure.
The text says Christ still sends his disciples ahead of him into the world. Sometimes, sure, an apostle carries a leather-bound Bible.
But sometimes, the text says, they carry a wrench.
Sometimes they carry a lunch pail.
Or sometimes they just carry a smile that another exhausted soul desperately needs.
The mission of bringing light into the world hasn't changed at all. It's just the equipment that looks different.
That is the crucial pivot of the morning prayer. The broadcast uses the Canticle of Zechariah, known as the Benedictus, to frame this concept of daily blue-collar salvation.
For those who might not know the backstory, the Canticle of Zechariah isn't just a nice poem.
No, the context is wild.
Zechariah was a priest who doubted an angel's promise that he would have a son in his old age, and as a result, he was struck mute for 9 months.
9 months of total silence.
This canticle is literally his first spoken words after 9 months of forced silence.
The silence broke his cynicism.
It did. And when he finally speaks, he prophesies about his newborn son, John the Baptist, preparing the way for the Lord.
The specific lines the broadcast highlights speak of the Orient from on high visiting us, to enlighten them that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to direct our feet into the way of peace.
To enlighten them that sit in darkness.
Yes, but the broadcast's implication is deeply personal. It implies that you, carrying your lunch pail or your wrench, are the physical mechanism by which that divine light reaches someone sitting in the darkness.
Wow.
The darkness and shadow of death might not be a literal dungeon today. It might be the suffocating despair of a coworker in an office cubicle.
Or the quiet terror of a family member in a hospital waiting room.
Exactly. You are the one directing feet into the way of peace.
And to make sure you don't miss that responsibility, the broadcast poses a very specific, challenging reflection question right before it assumes you will walk out your front door.
What's the question?
It asks, what gift has God already placed in my hands that someone else needs?
Think about how drastically that shifts your morning paradigm.
It flips it upside down. You wake up thinking, what must I accomplish today to secure my position? And this prayer forces you to ask, what am I carrying that actually belongs to someone else?
It requires a total surrender of ownership.
And the text synthesizes this beautifully with the reflection on the lives of the saints.
We often think of saints as these glowing, untouchable figures in stained glass windows.
Right, like they aren't real people.
But the source argues that the saints were characterized by a profound, infectious joy, primarily because they understood they ultimately owned nothing.
Nothing. Not their talents, not their possessions, not even their time.
Time is a big one.
I was thinking about this regarding time specifically. If I believe I own my schedule, then an unexpected interruption, like someone cutting me off in traffic or a coworker asking for help or a child spilling milk, that makes me furious because they are stealing my property.
They are stealing your time.
Exactly. But if I believe that my time is merely entrusted to me by the Creator, then an interruption isn't a theft, it's just a reallocation of resources by the actual owner.
It can be freely shared.
Yes. You cease to be a vault hoarding your resources, and you become a conduit.
And whether the specific gift you are carrying today is technical expertise, emotional encouragement, supernatural patience, a willingness to forgive a slight, or just a quiet, faithful presence in a difficult room, you're just passing along what was handed to you in the first place.
You didn't pay for it, so you don't need to charge for it.
A conduit, not a vault. That is profound.
It really is. And it circles perfectly back to the great paradox that the text reveals at its core. The more we discover that everything is gift, the more freely we are able to give.
When you review the entire arc of the single morning broadcast, it is truly a masterful piece of spiritual and psychological engineering.
It takes you on a comprehensive journey in a very short amount of time.
It really does. It starts by stripping away the digital noise and asking you to simply recognize the unearned majesty of creation.
The sunrise over the Missouri River, the sound of the birds waking up in Atchison.
From there, it asks you to accept God's merciful parenting, recognizing that He was teaching you to walk before you even had the capacity to know who He was.
Then it challenges you to physically drop your psychological luggage, to leave those imagined arguments and yesterday's failures on the floor where they belong.
And finally, it sends you walking out into your ordinary, everyday job, carrying your wrench or your lunch pail, but with empty hands and a trusting heart.
As the broadcast draws to a close, it returns to that incredibly evocative imagery of Atchison to ground you one last time.
The sun has finally climbed above the bluff.
The streets are getting busy. The shopkeepers on Commercial Street are unlocking their front doors and sweeping the sidewalks.
The local schoolyards are sitting quiet in the summer warmth.
The little radio station is preparing to sign off the airwaves for the morning, and it leaves the listener with a final distilled set of instructions for the hours ahead.
Receive gratefully. Give generously. Walk humbly.
Without cost you have received, without cost you are to give.
It's beautiful.
Think back to that frantic morning routine we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive.
The blaring alarm, the terrifying phone screen, the immediate rush of stress.
The next time you find yourself standing in your kitchen, clutching a coffee mug, and already frustrated by an unfinished conversation or an imagined argument before the day has even officially started, I want you to try something.
What's the challenge?
What if you viewed your own ability to drop that argument as a gift?
Wow.
What if your capacity to simply offer unearned patience to your spouse or your kids or your most annoying coworker wasn't something you had to dig deep and manufacture out of your own exhausted willpower?
Because that willpower runs out so fast.
It really does. But what if it is simply a prepackaged gift? Something you didn't have to earn, placed in your hands by a father, that you are now casually passing along to someone who desperately needs it in the darkness?
Now that is a thought to carry with you all day.